Hi, so today is March 18th and it is 1:17 p.m. and today we're on Zoom talking today. My name is Brenann Hamilton with the UNI Museum and I will be interviewing Katrina Hamilton. Thank you so much for interviewing with us. Please state your name, your role as either a student or teacher during your time at a consolidated school, the name of the school, and when you attended school, from what years.
Okay, sure. My name is Katrina Hamilton. Back when I went to the consolidated school, my name was Katrina O'Loughlin. I attended there from kindergarten through 12th grade, but it was not until fourth grade, when I was in fourth grade, that the consolidation occurred. Prior to the consolidation was Fayette High School, Fayette Elementary. And then once it was consolidated, it was North Fayette High School.
Okay. So.
And I guess, did you want to know the years I attended?
The years.
It was 1980 until 1992.
Okay.
So all through my school. That's the school I went to.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to describe your childhood here. So when were you born?
I was born in 1973 in September. My dad was in the military, and my mom came back to West Union, Iowa. They were stationed in, I believe, Virginia at the time. And so then, like I said, my mom came back a month early so that I would be born at a civilian hospital. She did not like military hospitals. Mm-hmm. And then in October, I went back. I flew with my mom, and that's when my dad got to meet me.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So where did you grow up?
I grew up from the time I was 4 until I graduated from high school in Fayette, Iowa.
Okay. Where were you beforehand?
I was in Virginia for a short time period, which I don't really have any recollection of. And I have very little memory of living in Charleston, South Carolina. Okay. And that's where I lived prior to moving to Fayette.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. So what was your family like?
My dad, when we first moved, he was right out of the Navy. So he was a college student, and my mom really felt it was very important for her. She wanted to stay home with my sister and I. I had a younger sister who was 2 years younger than me. And when my dad completed his schooling, he was a CPA, and he worked for a time in a neighboring town, Owine, Iowa. And while he was a student, he worked part-time as a farmhand for my uncle in Wadena. That kind of helped make some money so we could afford to live, since my mom was home with us. And then for a period of time, my dad commuted to Waterloo, Iowa, and was a CPA, an accountant there. Mm-hmm. And then eventually he was a teacher at the local college at Upper Iowa University. And eventually he started his own business in Waverly, Iowa. And he had an accounting business and then a side little computer business as well. My mom, when I was in elementary, started selling Avon, and that helped her stay active, and then also brought in a small income from our family.
Okay. So just for the record, what uncle did your dad stay with? And then what was his
name? He didn't stay with him. He just went and worked for him. Yes. That was Dale Minger in Wadena, Iowa. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then your sister's name?
My sister is Callista. And then I was in 8th grade. I had a younger sister also born, Shailene. Mm-hmm. And then when I was a junior in high school, my brother was born, and his name is William or Bill.
Okay. How far did you live from the school?
I lived across town, so it was probably about a mile. And when it was consolidated, they changed it because prior to the consolidation, Fayette high school, elementary, went all the way from K to 12th grade. And then after the consolidation happened, it only went from K to 6th grade. And then at 7th grade, the bus would take you to West Union, which was 8 miles away.
Oh, okay.
And West Union had, back in the day, had also consolidated with another town, Hawkeye. So when I went to middle school, it was 3 towns. It was Fayette and West Union and Hawkeye.
Okay. How did you normally get to school?
When I was younger, I walked.
Okay.
And I would walk to school. And then when I was in middle school, I'd walk to school, which then the bus would take us to the elementary school and then high school. And eventually I was old enough, I had a car so I could drive to the high school.
Okay. Yeah. So when you were walking, did you walk typically by yourself or with a family member or your sister at all?
I typically walked with my sister Callista, and we would walk together to school. My mom didn't like it very much, but we lived on the other side of town, and the town is cut in Fayette. The town is cut with a college campus. So we typically would cut through the college campus to get to our school, but nobody ever bothered us really at the college campus. Just kind of let us be.
Yeah. Do you remember a unique or distinctive way that you got to school? Or any unique memories?
No, it's kind of my grandpa ran for my grandpa, Bill O'Loughlin the second. My brother's the fourth, but my grandpa, Bill O'Loughlin, ran for sheriff when I was in elementary school. And I really wanted my grandpa to win. And there was a place where a bunch of college kids could put posters and stuff. And I saw a sign for my grandpa, the person that was running against my grandpa. And I wanted to rip it down, and I was just about to rip it down. And then somebody came up behind me and said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." And I was like, and I ran away.
There you go.
So that's kind of my biggest memory of walking to school. Was I was really tempted. I was about to do it, but I didn't do it.
Yeah. So did you ever cross, I know from being in Fayette that you didn't cross a river ever, but did you ever cross a railroad?
No, no railroads, no rivers. Like I said, we just went straight across the campus. There was no rivers or railroads. Okay. We have to go down a big hill or up a big hill because the town is like where I lived. It's kind of flat. And then there's the college, which is up on a hill. And then you have to go back down the hill to get to the other side of town. So the college is up on the hill. So the biggest thing was going up and down the hill.
Oh, okay.
And usually I walked, but sometimes when it was nice, we would ride our bikes, my sister and I.
Okay. Nice. Was there ever any troubles getting to school?
No. One time when I was in kindergarten, before my sister was old enough to go to school, I was maybe first grade. There was a boy. There were 2 boys from my class, and sometimes I'd walk with them just because they lived on my side of town. And typically I didn't, but every once in a while I would. And there were these big rocks in front of the college campus. And one of the boys, Jason Greenwald, told me I couldn't climb on the rocks. Only boys could climb on the rocks. So I got mad and I climbed on the rock to prove him that I could. And then he pushed me down and I got hurt and I was bleeding and I was crying. And so I guess I do remember that. And some people stopped to talk to me and asked me if I was okay. Like, "Little girl, are you okay?" And then I have a very distinct memory that my dad was so angry when I got home and I was all bloody that he went over to Jason Greenwald's dad's house and told his dad what a bully his son was. So I always thought my dad was my hero.
Yeah. So since you was about a mile walk, how long did it take you usually to get to school?
I can't remember because it's been a while. And when I was in high school, I drove, but I bet about 15, 20 minutes, I would assume.
That makes sense. So,
Yeah, the hardest part would be to try to get my sister to go to school because she hated school. And so there were sometimes I'd have to literally pull her to school.
oof, yeah, not fun times.
And then she'd make me late for school, and I didn't like being late for school.
Mm.
Then I'd get in trouble. And it wasn't my fault.
Oh, of course, yeah. So you liked school then?
I wouldn't say I liked it, but I just did what I was supposed to do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, so school definitely was not just an option for you then.
No, I had to go to school always.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite school subject?
I would say I liked reading and I liked history.
Okay.
Yeah, those were my favorite. I didn't like reading always. It took until I was older because I was a struggler. Reading was difficult for me. But then once I got it to click, then I liked it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. What were some of your other interests as a child?
I loved riding my bike. My bike was my very favorite thing. I would just spend all afternoon just riding my bike. Just loved the freedom of riding my bike. And that was pretty much the big thing. I play with my sister, and when I was younger, my neighborhood, there were lots of little kids around, and we would just ride our bikes or roller skates or just play.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got older, I didn't love to ride my bike as much. I got a little bit more lazy.
Feel like
And then I liked more watching TV.
Yeah.
And then I was in choir and band. I was in band for just a short period of time. And then I was in choir and through my freshman year in high school. And then I got a job and spent almost every day after school working. I was a waitress at a little restaurant called the Corner Inn.
Okay, interesting. What instrument did you play in band?
I played clarinet for about 2 years.
Okay. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, when I was very young, I wanted to be a nurse like my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a short period of time, I thought it'd be fun to be an astronomer and study the stars. But I really didn't enjoy math or science, so that wouldn't be a very good career for me. Mm-hmm. And then I always enjoyed working with kids, and because my siblings, my younger two siblings especially, are so much younger than me, I kind of just thought it'd be fun to be a teacher. So that's what I am now. I'm a 4th grade teacher.
Awesome.
At Newman Elementary here in Mason City.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. So what is your earliest memory of school? I
remember kind of maybe not so much about school, but I remember being in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was lactose intolerant. Mm. And I drank milk when I wasn't supposed to because it was chocolate milk, and I just really loved chocolate milk, and I threw up all over my desk. And I remember that Jason Greenwald going, "Mrs. Stevenson, Katrina threw up all over her desk," and he was pointing at me.
Oh.
So that's one of my memories of school. Or another time when we had indoor recess and we wanted to play Candyland because it was our very favorite board game. And it was up really high on the shelf, on like the board game shelf. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Stevenson was talking to someone, so I thought I would climb up and get it down for all of us. And then I fell, and a bunch of board games came flying down at me, and she was really, really mad.
What did a typical morning before school look like? Like before you go on your little walk, what did you have to do?
I would just my responsibility was get myself up and my sister up. And then we would eat breakfast and head to school.
Okay. What was expected of you at home? Like, what chores did you have?
It depended on my age. So when I was in elementary school, I had chores like clean up after myself, of course. I had to make my bed. I needed to fold the laundry and help with my sister, keep my sister kind of entertained. And then when I got older, I had additional chores. Mm-hmm. Like I had to make supper for my family. I had to do the laundry, not just fold it, but do the laundry. I had to vacuum and sweep and dust. Dusting was a big one that my mom wanted done every week. Oh, clean the toilet, clean the bathrooms, the shower, all those kind of things.
Yeah, basically clean the house.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. When you were at school, what was your typical attire? Did you have a uniform or a dress?
We did not have a uniform. Nope. I usually wore jeans, and if it was warm, if it was cold out, wore jeans and a sweatshirt. I love sweatshirts back then.
Okay.
And then when it was warmer, it was t-shirts and shorts. So pretty basic kid wear.
Oh, for sure. Can you describe, from the best of your memory, the way that your school looked like on the outside and the inside?
At the elementary, it was one story.
Mm-hmm.
And the high school, back when Fayette had a high school,
mm-hmm.
It was separate. You had to go outside, and then there was a big gym, and it was connected. The gym was like right by the parking lot, and then there was a big, huge brick building that was connected to the gym. The gym was like an add-on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then when I was in elementary, and it was Fayette Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
We had a gym in our elementary as well, and it was also a lunchroom.
Okay, yeah.
A lunchroom and a gym. Once the high school was no longer Fayette High School and it was consolidated into North Fayette,
mm-hmm.
then high school part, the brick building part of it, got tore down, and the only thing that remained was that addition, the gym, and then there was office space there for the office staff. Mm-hmm. And there was a art room there. That was it for Fayette Elementary.
Okay.
At North Fayette Middle School,
mm-hmm.
that they had converted their old high school in West Union to become a middle school. So it was 3 stories in an old brick building that was very, very hot. Mm-hmm. And the principal at the time at the middle school, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, did not allow us to wear shorts. So it was not air conditioned. The whole building was not air conditioned. The only person who could had air conditioning was the principal and the secretary. Otherwise, everything else was hot, very hot, and nobody was allowed to wear shorts. His rule was it had to be 80 degrees by 8 a.m. to wear shorts. And it was never 80 degrees by 8 a.m. So we never got to wear shorts. I did participate in a little kind of a coup, and for about a week, when I was in 9th grade, mm-hmm. for about a week, the 9th graders wore shorts. I didn't do it the first day. I didn't do it the second day. I did do it on the 3rd day, but then I thought, oh, that's kind of pushing it. He's going to push back. And then like on the 4th day or the 5th day, he gave everybody detention that had shorts on that day, and their parents were called and had to bring their jeans to them. My parents had actually gone to what was my middle school, or my junior high was my parents' high school. Okay. I believe.
Did any of your schools have air conditioning?
The high school did.
Okay.
The newer did. Yeah, but the elementary did not, no. And I can remember the teachers putting big box fans, opening the windows and putting big box fans trying to get the heat out.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And I can remember, I always thought it was weird because we'd have those windows open. If there was a tornado drill, the teacher would always have to shut those windows and then shut the blinds before we could go out in the hallway to go put a book on our heads.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Because that's where we went for our tornado drills, were in the hallways, which was silly because at the ends of the hallways are big glass doors.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in some of the older buildings, did they have running water, or did you have to use an outhouse?
No, in the 80s, we had running water. It was pretty nice. No outhouses for us.
Well, that's good to know, So when you would first arrive at school, what did students usually do before the school day started?
In elementary, we'd play on the playground. Mm-hmm. And at the middle school, well, for me, like junior high is what they called it. The junior high, we rode the bus to get there. And then you went to homeroom and you just sat and quietly, you could talk, visit, whisper until school started. But you just sat in the homeroom and waited for school to start. And high school was kind of the same thing. People were more apt to just be in the hallways and by their locker and then head to the classroom when the bell rang.
Okay. Yeah. So how many students were in your graduating class?
There were 74 kids in my
74.
grade.
Okay. And how about in your school?
I don't remember what North Fayette would have had at that time period. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. How do you remember your classmates?
Well, for me, I went to Fayette Elementary. Almost everybody that went to Fayette Elementary, we were together almost the entire time. There would be, every once in a while, we'd get a new boy. There was always a boy.
Okay.
We'd get a new boy for a year or two, and then he'd leave, and then another new boy would come. So for the most part, Fayette Elementary, we only had 13 kids in our classroom. Sometimes we'd have 14 when this random new boy would come in, and then he'd leave again. So when we did end up going up to West Union, at that point we had 14. We had 10 girls and 4 boys in our class.
Okay. Interesting.
So I knew those kids pretty well because I had been with them the whole time. At Fayette, most people were pretty like working class people. We had a doctor's son, that Jason Greenwald, the little guy who pushed me off the rock. And then Troy Buchholz, his dad owned at one time, the only gas station in Fayette. So they would be the more wealthy, affluent people that were at our school. But yeah, for the most part in Fayette, most of the people were more working class. And then when we got up to West Union, there was people with more money than what Fayette people had.
Okay. Yeah. How do you think your classmates remember you?
I was very quiet. I didn't talk a lot at school at all because I didn't want to get in trouble. I always wanted my parents to be proud of me, and I just really wanted to be the best little student I could be. And I also didn't want to attract attention and have a target on my back because I never wanted to really deal with bullies or things, because sometimes people can be real turd nuggets.
Oh, for sure.
So I think they would maybe think of I was tall and quiet.
Yeah, that makes sense. When the school day started, was there any routines that you had at the beginning of the day?
Not that I can really remember. Sorry, it was pretty much just the one thing going back to another question you asked about things I remember. When the schools consolidated, I was in 4th grade, and it happened, that vote happened, I believe, like in the fall, which would make sense. That's when school boards and the people have votes. But prior to that, in the summer before 4th grade, there were 2 schools that were fighting for Fayette. Two schools wanted our school to consolidate with them. One was West Union, and the other one was Maynard. The 2 of them were fighting for us. And so they would promise things for Fayette, like if you join our school, this is what we'll do for you. So when my mom and dad went to school, their school was called North, which was in West Union, and their school colors were navy and yellow. Well, Fayette school colors were red and white. So when the thing that North offered to Fayette was they said that we could try to keep as much of our identity as possible, they changed the school colors to 3 school colors. So they said that the school colors would be navy, yellow, and red. And they said they'd also change the school from North to North Fayette. So that's, I think, one of the reasons. And also there was a lot of fear that Maynard would one day consolidate with Oline. And Oline Maynard is about 8 miles from Fayette.
Mm-hmm.
West Union is 8 miles from Fayette, but Owine is about a 20-minute drive. So everyone was very worried that if Fayette were to consolidate with Maynard, it would only be a matter of time before Maynard and Fayette would have to consolidate with Owine. And nobody wanted to see their kids have to drive 20 minutes on the bus, best case scenario. So that's why I think most people at that time voted for West Union. And so that's why North Fayette became North Fayette.
Yeah. So what classes did you have when you were in school? Like math?
I took pre-algebra and algebra. I took the bare minimum that I had to in math because I did not enjoy that class. I took sewing. I took cooking. I took German. I took 2 years of German. And I took history, government, the required classes as well, PE.
So what were those lessons like? Would you say pretty comparable to how today's classes are taught?
Oh, no. First off, we didn't have projectors like we have now. We had reels that you had to put, like you can't just watch a TV or a DVD or a VCR. They didn't have all that when I was in elementary school. They had these reels, almost like a movie theater has.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had to put in a special machine, and they had a big screen that they brought down, and it would make they'd have to thread the film through it to make it run, and then it would play from the back all the way to the front reel, and then when it was done, they'd have to rewind it so that the film went back to the original case, and then they'd take it and they rent it or borrow, kind of like a library from the AEA. So if you watched a video or a movie, the school got it from the AEA, because not just everybody had those little reels, and they were all very academic. You didn't get to watch like fun things.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
That was a very, very rare. But when I got to be in 5th grade, 6th grade, we just were getting like TV and VCR players, and they would have the TV on a cart that they could bring into the room to watch movies, but the whole school had to borrow that TV player and VHS tape, so it didn't happen very often. Yep, they had to roll the card around. It was kept in like a resource room. Mm-hmm. And we had a library at my school, and my mom was really good friends with the librarian. And so it was kind of weird because when I saw her outside of school, her name was Mary. But when I saw her at school, I had to remember to call her Mrs. Griffin and not call her Mary.
So how was your school day structured?
We were in our one homeroom from K through 4th grade. Okay. And then in 5th grade and 6th grade, you would swap for math. So the 6th graders came to our 5th grade teacher for reading, and we went to 6th grade for math. And then that's how that worked. When I was in 5th grade, I had a teacher. It was her last year. Thankfully, I didn't have her for my homeroom. I only had her for math. But she was a very mean old lady. And one day when we were in class, she told me in front of the whole class that I was the dumbest math student that she ever had in her whole career. And I kind of laughed. And she said, "No, I'm not joking. You are the dumbest math student." And nowadays that would never, ever, ever happen. Never would a teacher say that to a student. But back then it wasn't. Students didn't have the same treatment as they do now.
For sure.
But that was definitely different. But Mrs. Butterfield, it was her real name. Mrs. Butterfield, yes.
I'm going to assume math was not your favorite class?
No, I did not like math. And I always felt that I was dumb because the teacher told me I was the dumbest student she'd ever had in her whole history. And she was 1 year away from retirement, so she would know.
So did you ever have any exams or writing assignments?
Oh, I'm sure. I can remember in elementary school, we had to use the encyclopedia to do research because we didn't have computers back then. We had to handwrite everything. And we had to learn all about plagiarism and that you had to change words so that they can't be exactly word for word. So I would just change one or two words and pretty much make the encyclopedia my paper because I didn't know, you know, when you're little. And then I can remember doing research papers in high school, and you'd have to go to the library and you'd have to read an entire book pretty much and look for information and have little note cards to write out the quotes and things you were going to use and the page number and the author and all that information because you would need it for when you did research. It's not like now where you can just Google stuff and
for sure.
find resources easily online. It was a lot more work to prepare to write a paper than it is nowadays. In library books, since we were a small school, sometimes they would get, if it was a research paper thing, they would bring in special books to the library that they got from the AEA that was maybe all on, I don't know, lobsters or sea creatures or whatever. And then we'd have to kind of fight over the books.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That way we could have to share them.
Yeah. So what kind of school supplies did you use?
I always had my trusty backpack. I had a Trapper Keeper.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of like a binder. And notebook paper, pencils, papers, erasers, the normal things. No computers.
Yeah, makes sense.
No computers, no electronics at all. None of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when you were a kid, did you have specials like art or PE or music?
We did. Yep. We had an art teacher once we consolidated with West Union. There was an art teacher that would travel to the different elementary schools. So we would have her once or twice a week. And then we had our own music teacher. She was actually the principal's wife. And she just worked, I think, for Fayette part-time. And then PE, we shared a PE teacher with the other schools, and he also had to travel.
So when you specifically were doing music, what did that typically look like?
Typically, we would just be it was the art/music room. Okay. So they had to share that room. And there was a little piano in there, and she'd bring that in and play it, and we'd sing songs. She didn't use records or anything like that. It was just her playing her piano.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so no radio then?
No, I mean, we had radios, but no, she didn't use any recorded music. Okay. She just used her and her piano.
Yeah. Do you know if you ever used the Fullerton Music Education?
I don't remember, but we had books. We had music books. Okay. We had actual textbooks for music, and it had the music in it. And each grade, when we were Fayette Elementary, each grade had its own music book. And then eventually because we were consolidated by the time I got to 5th and 6th grade, they got rid of those music books and we got to take them home. So I thought that was kind of cool to get to have a school book at home when they got rid of those books. Yeah.
What were your teachers like?
For the most part, they were old women.
Okay.
I had a male teacher in 4th grade. He was right out of college. And I think he had my sister as well, but I think after Callista, I think he was only stayed in Fayette for about 2 years. And then he moved on to a bigger school.
Okay. Interesting.
My favorite teacher was Mrs. Heyer, who was my 5th grade teacher, who taught reading everything but math. That was bad, Mrs. Butterfield. But yeah, Mrs. Heyer, I thought she was just phenomenal, really cool lady. And her husband owned the grocery store in West Union, and she just was a really, really sweet, nice lady. And she even took us on a field trip to her house, and we got to walk through her house and see what her house looked like. And then she brought us into her dining room, and we all got to have cookies and milk at her house.
Oh, sweet.
So that was very fun to see where she lived and what her life was like. And then her son-in-law actually was our sixth grade teacher because Mrs. Butterfield had retired, and then they hired her son-in-law.
That's
So
cool.
that was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did teachers typically wear to school?
The teachers wore dresses and heels and nylons, and the couple male teachers I had wore typically dress pants and a dress shirt and pretty much a tie.
Okay, yeah. So, as a student, what was expected of you from the teachers? Like, did you come prepared for lessons?
We were expected to sit down, be quiet, listen, and pay attention.
Okay.
We had very, very little group work, and it was pretty much just you memorize what I teach you and then regurgitate it for the test.
Did your teachers, so when your teachers would have rules for the classroom, did they have any specific disciplinary techniques or anything like that?
We would just miss recess, like you'd have to stand against the wall if you talked.
Okay.
That was the big thing. And when I was in middle school, the middle school teachers made you write sentences. I had a middle school math teacher, and my best friend and I were in the same homeroom, or it's the same homeroom, so we had the same classes. And I got in trouble a lot in there, my friends and I did. And so we have to, a lot of times, write sentences that said, I will not talk in math class.
Okay. What was your best friend's name?
Her name was Danielle Castleton, and I just called her Danny.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And what was the teacher who made you write the sentences?
Mr. Snicker. Mr. Snicker in middle school. In seventh grade, we were in the same, they didn't let us be together after seventh grade.
Oh.
But in seventh grade, we were in the same homeroom, and we had to write a lot of sentences of, I will not talk in math class.
Yes.
And then we had a class called, like, I don't know if it's guidance or what it was. It was like a family development kind of class where you had to pretend you were married to someone in the class. You drew names. So you didn't get to pick who you were married to. So you drew names, and that's your husband or wife. And then we'd have these Beanie Baby kind of, these large dolls that were made out of beans or something.
Oh, okay.
And they were our children. Mm-hmm. And so my friend Danny, this was in, I believe it was 8th grade. It would have been 8th grade. We weren't in the same homeroom, but we just happened to be in the same family health development class, whatever it was, the guidance class. And she got in trouble because usually the girls sat on one side of the room and the boys all sat on the other side of the room in middle school. And there was like this area that nobody sat in, the no man's land. Mm-hmm. And Danny got in trouble and had to move because she was talking. She had to move over to the boys' side of the room, and I started laughing because I thought it was hilarious. And then that was the first and only time I ever had to go to the office, was because I was laughing that Danny had to go to the other side of the room.
In school, how did you receive your textbooks? Did you have to buy them or order them, or?
We rented them from the school, and you would just, your parents, when they signed you up for school, they would pay the registration fee.
Okay, yeah.
And then when you got to your first class, the first day, whatever, like math teacher would give you the math book, the English teacher would give you your English book, and kind of like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned your school also had a PE teacher.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have any specific PE uniforms, or would you just wear whatever?
No, we just wore shorts and a t-shirt and tennis shoes.
Okay.
And we had a locker room, and in high school they didn't really care, but in middle school you were supposed to get a shower after PE, but nobody wanted to get a shower. So we would, because they were just giant, what a locker room shower is like. And all the girls were like, I'm not changing, I'm not getting a shower in front of everybody. So we would just get our hair wet. So they thought we got a shower and just cake on the deodorant.
Was your PE classes separated by gender?
No. Okay. Nope. And we'd always have to, we had in high school, our PE teacher's name was Mr. Weimer. Mm-hmm. And so we called it the Weimer Olympics. We'd have to do I think the same thing happens nowadays too. When you go to PE, you have to, at the beginning of the school year, run a mile, do some sit-ups and push-ups and chin-ups and all that stuff. And we learned from upperclassmen when we were in high school, we learned that if you do a really bad job in the fall and do a better job in the spring, you'll get a better grade. So in the fall, nobody tried. So we'd get really low scores. And then in the spring, we would try and then we'd get good scores.
Oh.
And I think as an adult, when I look back, I think probably our PE teacher also was rated by how we improved through the year. So I'm sure he didn't mind it, is my thought.
Do you have the presidential fitness PE? Was that what it was called or no?
Yeah. I think that's what it was, but we just called it the Weimer Olympics. It's West Union at North Fayette. You could, we had a bowling unit, so we would go to the bowling alley and bowl. We had a golfing unit, and we'd actually go to the golf course and golf. And we have a roller skating unit. So instead of going to the roller skating rink, they would bring roller skates in, and we would have roller skates, and we would roller skate on the gym floor, which I know nowadays, at least where I teach, there's no way the principal would allow roller skates on our gym floor. But back then, it was a big free-for-all.
Yeah. Where did you eat lunch?
When I was in elementary school, we had, at one point, it was the lunchroom and it was the gym. But because the high school went up to West Union, we got to have their gym as our gym. Mm-hmm. And so then the old gym our elementary gym became a lunchroom. And that's all it was used for. Mm-hmm. Then in middle school, we had a large gym that was both a lunchroom and a gym.
Okay.
And then in high school, we had a lunchroom that was solely just a lunchroom. And then we had a gym that was solely just a gym.
Okay. Yeah.
And we'd never had open campus. That was never allowed. You had to stay on campus. If you left, you would get in trouble.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Even as a senior. Nope, they didn't allow that.
Interesting, yeah. So did you usually sit with your class or with your friends when you would eat?
In elementary school, I ate with my class. Mm-hmm. And then in middle school, also, you ate with your class, but you could kind of sit with the other homeroom if you want to. You know, it wasn't as tight. Mm-hmm. There were 2 homerooms in middle school. Mm-hmm. There was a 7-1 and a 7-2 and an 8-1 and 8-2 and 9-1 and 9-2. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
And then it was all based on if you had choir or not when you were in middle school. So if you were at choir, you had a different lunch period than if you didn't have choir. And then in high school, it was just with your friends, whoever your friends were.
Yeah.
And they just had 2 lunch periods in high school, lunch A and lunch B.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Did people usually bring a cold lunch or bring their own lunch from home, or did most people just eat whatever the school provided?
Almost everyone just ate what the school provided.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was really not any options until you went up to the high school, and then you could choose if you wanted to eat the lunch or you wanted a salad bar.
Okay. Interesting.
But other than that, there was never options like there are now.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what was a popular food when you were a kid?
We really liked the school pizza. Everybody liked the rectangle school pizza. That was the big cat's meow.
Okay. So what was recess like when you were in elementary school? When
I was in elementary school, we had jump ropes and we had a very, very tall monkey bars. Mm-hmm. And we had those until my friend Jody Mauer fell and broke her arm. Ooh. And then they took those out and we weren't allowed to be on them anymore. And they literally took them out of the school. We didn't have them anymore after she fell and broke her arm.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just mainly those large monkey bars. We really loved the large monkey bars, and we'd dangle upside down on those from our knees. And then, like I said, the jump ropes, and then there was slides, and there was a playground where the boys would play kickball or dodgeball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was multiple grades outside at once. It wasn't just one grade.
Yeah.
The teachers took turns having recess duty, but it was like 3 grades at a time or 2 grades at a time outside.
Yeah. Did your school provide toys for you to play with, like kickballs or footballs or whatever?
Yes.
Did okay.
Yep, they did. But extra things like we really liked Chinese jump rope when I was a kid. We had to bring those ourselves. They didn't have like a Chinese jump rope. That was a specialty thing.
What does that mean?
A Chinese jump rope. What it was just, they called it, I don't know if that's what it is so called or not, but it's just pretty much kind of like a large elastic thing that is like this shape.
Okay.
And then you put it around your ankles. So you have 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so this person and this person all has it on their ankles. And then you would have to so the rope was kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then these are your legs. And you would jump in between the jump rope, and then you try to jump on them and stomp on both of them at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And then you would say songs and stuff, and then they moved that up to your knees. So the people that were holding the jump rope on their ankles, then it got moved up to your knees, and then you had to try to jump, doing the same thing again, and try to jump high enough to jump above it, and then bring it back down.
Were there any forbidden games or activities when you're in recess? Like no tackle football, no Red Rover, no standing directly up on the ice, stuff like that?
No, oh no. We got to run on the ice and slide across it. It was pretty much a big free-for-all out there. They could do whatever they wanted. Hence why I think Jody broke her arm, and then they got a little stricter. But that happened, I want to say that happened in 6th grade. So it would have only affected like the younger grades, because we didn't, by the time they ripped that baby out, we were up at the middle school or the junior high. So
that makes sense. So you mentioned too that you would have indoor recess. What games did you typically play during indoor recess?
We would just do board games.
Okay.
That's all. Just board games if it was really cold outside and we couldn't go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we were expected to go outside, and a lot of times we'd make forts. That was a really big popular thing in the wintertime, is to dig and make forts. So we'd have a girl fort and a boy fort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you were younger in elementary school, did you have a nap time?
In kindergarten, we did. Even though kindergarten was only half a day, we still had a nap time. Mm-hmm. And in 1st grade, we did. But then after 1st grade, we did not. No.
Did you ever have to bring anything from home for nap time, like a blanket or a towel?
Blanket, yep. I had to bring a blanket, and one to sleep on and one to cover up with.
Like, what did you do at the very end of the day?
School was just over, and we'd get our bags and our backpacks, and I'd have to walk home. Mm-hmm. One time, our school let out early, but they didn't let the parents know, and I walked home. Mm-hmm. And my dad was very, very, very scared because he couldn't find me, because when he went to the school was empty. Mm-hmm. And I had walked, it was really bitterly cold, the reason they had let school out early. Mm-hmm. And I had walked up to my sister I don't know if she was still there, but my sister went to this preschool at the college preschool. Mm-hmm. And the person who was the preschool director, Candy was her name. She's good friends with my mom. I walked to the preschool, and then I asked Candy if she could call my mom and dad and see if they could come get me, because it was really cold outside. Okay. And so then my mom and dad were so scared and worried. And when I got home, they made sure I didn't have any frostbite, and I had to take a warm bath, and it was this big thing. But I was fine. But yeah.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yep, I just would get my bag and get my stuff. And if I rode my bike to school, I rarely got to ride my bike to school because my mom always worried someone might steal it because there were no locks. So I'd either ride my bike to school or I'd walk.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Very rarely did I ever get a ride from my parents. Very, 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 almost always. Because when I was younger, when I was in elementary, especially lower elementary, we only had one car. My family only had one car. We didn't have two cars. So my dad is the only person who had a car. So that's why I'd always have to walk or ride my bike on those rare occasions, is because we didn't have a second car, and my dad would be at work.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And then later on, when I was in upper elementary, that's when we got a second car.
Okay.
But even then, my mom very, very rarely, if ever, drove us to school.
Once you got home, what was the at-home expectations? Like, did you have homework? Were you just still able to go play? What was that like?
Very first, when we get home, we would grab a snack and watch He-Man. It was on after school. So we'd try to race to get home so we could watch He-Man on CBS.
Okay.
And then after He-Man, we would go outside and play. And we'd just play until it was pretty much time for supper, and then ate supper and got our baths and read stories and went to bed.
Okay. There you go.
There really wasn't really any homework.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if it's just pretty much you did your work at school.
Okay. That makes sense. So did you have any type of 8th grade examination or no?
Nope. We just moved on up to 9th grade.
Okay. Sounds good. So when you look back at consolidation, what was that experience like?
Well, like I said, at first, that summer before we consolidated, there was a lot of kind of fighting in the town amongst parents and stuff. And there was a lot of signs up throughout the community that would promote whichever school they thought we should go to. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a huge shock to go from a class of 13 to a class of 72 or 74.
Yeah.
That was a challenge, just overwhelming.
Oh,
and like I said, everybody, and then go to a new school where you don't know people and have to relearn the different cliques and the different where everybody fits in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that is definitely a big jump from 13 to like 70.
Yeah. Yep, it was a big jump. But I mean, still a very small school considering you have 3 towns to make that up. But still, yeah, that first 7th grade, at first, I had said how we were all in 2 homerooms, 7-1 or 7-2. Mm-hmm. We would, at first, probably the first month for sure, if not 2 months, we all went in a big group to all our classes because we were so scared. And the building was so big compared to Fayette, because we were in this big 3-story building, and you might have shop class, which is in the basement, and then a typing class on the middle, 2nd floor, or home ec, which is on 1st floor. And we were just like, I don't know where all these things are. So the first month or 2, we just giant group of kids went to every single room together to make sure we went to the right places.
Oh, yeah. So did the lessons or anything from the school itself change, or just the size of the class and the amount of people changed?
The amount of people and the size definitely changed. And I don't know, because for me, I was in middle school, so I don't know how it would have been different. I mean, middle school is just different than elementary school. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it was different than it was prior, or if it was, they just embraced more kids,
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, middle school it's different. Yeah. We had lockers, and the lockers had locks, and we had to you only had 3 minutes to get to your locker, and your locker could be, if you were in 7th grade, your locker was on the 1st floor, and you could have a class on the 3rd floor, and you have 3 minutes to get down to your locker, unlock it, get your stuff out, and get up to the next class.
Wow.
So sometimes that caused stress and anxiety.
For sure. Yeah. So were either of your parents on the school board?
No, no, they weren't.
Well, what was the typical year-round school schedule like?
We typically started in mid-August and we went until about mid-May.
Hmm.
And we, I don't know, we got Christmas break, 2 weeks off at Christmas break. We never had spring break. We just have some time off at Easter time.
Hmm.
I always thought it was funny because if we had an early out, like, so say for Easter, you'd have an early out, or right before Christmas, you have an early out. School got out at 3:20, but an early out was 2:20. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
only an hour. Back then you were counted days, not hours.
Mm.
So if they fed you lunch, it counted for a day. So they would sometimes, when it was just Fayette Elementary, not at North Fayette, not when it was North Fayette, but when it was Fayette, if there was a really bad weather, they would bring us all in and we might eat lunch at 10 a.m.
Wow.
and then they'd send us home.
Interesting. Yeah.
But that was just for Fayette. That was not North Fayette because they wanted to count it as a day.
Yeah. So, during your summer break, what did you usually do during that time?
I played with my sister and whatever neighborhood kids, or I'd go up to my grandma's and I'd play with my cousin Heather and my sister Callista, and we'd play, and we just played all summer long. There weren't at Fayette, they did have some park and rec, like t-ball or softball for girls and baseball for boys, but I really wasn't interested in it.
Mhm.
And my mom didn't make me do it. So I just played all summer. I rode my bike and
Okay.
had a pretty lazy summer,
Mhm.
just playing.
Which grandmother did you go to visit?
My grandma, Donna Miller,
Okay, and that was your
visit her.
mother's mother?
Yep. Yep. My mother's mother. Yep. We'd go up and play. And then my dad's mother every year, Arlene O'Loughlin, she would take me and my sister and all my cousins on that side of the family. So there were typically about 7 of us. And she would take us camping for a summer, just us and her. My grandpa wasn't there, no aunts and uncles, not my parents. And it was just camp with grandma. And we'd have chore charts and we would do different fun activities. When we got a little bit older, we went to this place called Dun Roman in Minnesota. And my grandpa would come and park the camper for her. And then he would leave. And the older kids got to sleep in a tent outside.
Mhm.
And the younger kids had to sleep in the camper with grandma.
Oh.
And then pretty much our days were just wandering around this campground, going swimming or miniature golfing or hiking or whatever we wanted to do. And we just had to be home at lunchtime and supper time. And if it was our chore day, we had to be there a little bit earlier to make lunch or supper.
Okay, interesting.
Because we had to prepare our meals ourselves. And we had to give grandma a grocery list of what we would need for our day prior, and our parents would kind of help us with it. And then when it was time to make it, my grandma would help us make the food, and then we'd prepare it and have to help with the dishes afterwards. So it was kind of fun. My grandma, I guess my mom told me later on that my grandma always said, I never knew there were so many different ways to make hot dogs. Because we would all make hot dogs and all the different ones because we're just kids.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Any other funny memories of grandma camp?
When we were very young, before we went to Dun Roman, we'd go to a more primitive campsite, and there was a snake there. And that was back before I had as many cousins as I did by the time we went to Dun Roman. It was just me and my sister and my other cousin Jess. And we were standing on a picnic bench because there was a snake and my grandma was throwing firewood at the snake. It was very funny.
Was your experience pretty typical for kids from your area? Like, did other students typically just kind of hang out as well around town?
Yeah, pretty much. There wasn't any really fears in Fayette, so we just rode our bikes to each other's houses after school and on Saturdays. And that's pretty much how summer was spent. Like I said, in upper elementary, there was like swimming lessons, and there and you had to ride the bus to West Union to the swimming pool to take swimming lessons. And there was baseball and softball, but for the most part, everybody just played.
Okay,
We just
yeah.
all played together.
Mhm.
Yep, it's pretty laid back and
Mhm.
just existed. Nobody was really mean to anybody because it was only, like in my class, there were only 13 kids, or 14 if some random boy moved in and out. But yeah, so we just knew each other, and we kind of just lived with each other. It wasn't until we got to middle school with the bigger school that people were meaner.
Oh, that makes sense. Kind of cliquey. And were there any special events or community events that happened in your school?
At my school, not so much, but in my community, every September we had watermelon days.
Mm.
And there was a little watermelon stand right outside of Fayette. It was called Seven. They had their watermelon stand. And the whole town would get free watermelon, as much as you could eat. And it was always right around my birthday, was watermelon days. So there would be a big, one of the parking lots, that would be an empty parking lot. They'd bring in all these picnic tables, and they'd just give you as much watermelon as you could eat for free. There was a donation to the town. And then we would have parade, and some little carnival rides would be there. And it was just the funnest part of the whole year to live in Fayette was watermelon days. And one year, watermelon days fell on my birthday.
Mm.
And my grandma, Arlene O'Loughlin, she was the head nurse at the nursing home in West Union, and their floats for the parade had a piano on it, and they were just singing old time songs. And there were some of the older residents that were on that float with my grandma and some of the other nurses and stuff. And then when my grandma saw me, they started playing Happy Birthday, and she sang, and all the people on the float sang Happy Birthday to me, which at the time that was so embarrassing.
Oh, of course.
But now it's super sweet, and I love that memory. But yes, it was just embarrassing. And my dad was a fireman. He was a volunteer fireman. So they would give fire truck rides, and in the parade, we could ride on the fire truck. And at the time, when I was younger, I was a Girl Scout. So the Girl Scouts would walk in the parade and hand out candy. And yeah, it was good.
That's awesome. Yeah. So do you remember any major local, national, or world events that occurred during your school years?
I remember the whole thing with the Iran-Contra hearing. I think I was in middle school at the time, and I thought it was incredibly boring. Like I said, I was in middle school, junior high.
Yeah.
And my dad made us watch the whole maybe 2 weeks or whatever. And it was extremely boring. And my dad would always just say, "You're watching history. You're watching history." And then when I was in high school, we had the first Iraq War. And I was actually I worked at a little restaurant called the Corner Inn. Yeah. And I was working there, and the radio, we were listening to the radio, and it switched, and it told us that we had declared war on Iraq. And I was really worried because my dad was still in the reserves, and my mom was pregnant with my brother, and my dad was put on alert that he could be called up at any time for duty. And then my uncle, who is only 9 years older than me, his wife was also pregnant around that time period. And my uncle, who had been out of the service for, I want to say at least 2, if not 4 years, he was called into active duty. So the end of his wife's pregnancy, he missed his first son because he had to go to Iraq. And my dad never had to go. We found out later that the papers had been made up, and they were going to call them in, and the war was over, so he didn't have to go.
Okay, interesting. And your uncle, that was Marty, correct?
Marty, yeah, Marty Miller. Yep, so he had to fight in the first Iraq War.
How did those events impact your school or your community?
It was really interesting at school that I loved history class. And so I loved going to class, and Mr. Peterson was my history teacher, and we would just discuss what was going on, and kind of everything else that we were supposed to be learning kind of got thrown out the window, and we would just discuss what was happening in the world at that moment.
That's awesome.
That was really good.
Yeah. So would you say that you had thinking of your memories, did you have a best or worst day at school?
I would say in middle school, my lowest day was I was bullied, and a kid named Chad Schroyer took me over. We were in a home ec class, and took me over by the home ec mirrors and held on to me and made me look in the mirror. And he said to me, "Have you ever seen anyone as ugly as you are?" So that was a really downer day. And I guess I just really enjoyed at school my friend Danny. She just made school fun when we were in school together. She moved to Texas before 9th grade, so that was too bad. But yeah, she made every day bearable and fun and laugh and just be silly and be a kid.
For sure.
Otherwise, I did not have a lot of good memories of school because I didn't feel like I really fit in, and we didn't have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I just went and did my time and got out of there as soon as I could. Did not want to do any extra things that would make me have to stay there any longer.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. So once you did get out of there, what did you do?
I went on to college, and I absolutely loved college.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied, and I became a teacher.
Awesome. And you teach at Newman Catholic High School, right?
Elementary, actually. Yes, I teach 4th grade. Newman Catholic Elementary. Yep. That's okay. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 3 wonderful children. And I have 2 beautiful little dogs and a wonderful husband. So life is good.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. So are there any important takeaways you want people to remember from your time being at a consolidated school?
Just remember that school goes quickly, and don't let people get you down.
Mm-hmm.
And better days are ahead.
For sure. Yeah. So this part might be more interesting for you given that you're a teacher. So what are some compares or contrasts you can think about between your experiences in school when you were a kid versus today's education system?
Okay, so one of the first things is pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. Right now, I feel like during COVID times, I feel very much like my childhood, where you have to sit in a seat, mm-hmm. You need to be quiet, you need your stuff. Of course, we didn't wear masks back then, but kids can't interact at all, really together at all. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, so last year when I was teaching, we had a lot more flexibility. We had flexible seating where if a kiddo wants to sit at their desk, they can, but if they want, they can lay on the floor and do their work. We had these little rocker chairs on the floor that they could sit in. Some of the classrooms had couches. Mm-hmm. Always group work, very much prior, like last year, very much everything was very group work based as much as we could. Mm-hmm. We really emphasized on teaching kids how to work in groups, what their roles were in a group, and just a lot more chatter, a lot more movements. You needed a Kleenex, you could just get up and get a Kleenex, go sit down, you need to sharpen your pencil, you get up and sharpen your pencil. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of like it was in the past where only one person could be up at a time. You have to go sharpen your pencil. You have to ask permission to even get a Kleenex. You could only go to the bathroom if it was bathroom time, unless it was an emergency. We'd all take a bathroom break, go use the bathroom. And prior, like last year, if you have to go to the bathroom anytime, you can just ask and go and come. And mm-hmm. just a lot more flexible. And prior, like my childhood, no electronics, no computers, very limited time on kind of if it was a film day, it was all exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Nowadays, like as a teacher, I introduced a lot of lessons with a little snippet of a film, so they kind of catches their attention, or I refer back to a lot of films or movies. Hey, this is kind of like, remember in this movie when this happened? Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about, or
yeah.
It's just a lot more interactive, a lot more student driven nowadays, where back then it was a lot more sit down, be quiet, listen to what I have to tell you. Okay, read this page, write a little report about it, hand it in. That's not like that. It's not like that anymore. Now it's read this in a group, discuss it, and have somebody share with the group or share with the class what you guys came up with.
Okay.
Things like just a lot more group orientated and more options and opportunities. I think more student driven than teacher driven.
Okay, yeah.
But I also think nowadays we have a lot more tests that we have to give students, and also a lot less recesses. When I was a kid, I had 3 recesses a day. My students in 4th grade have 1, and it's 20 minutes. That's it. That's what we have. We used to have a morning and afternoon and a lunchtime recess. So, yeah, just a lot different.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of going off that too, any different educational styles? I know that obviously during COVID times, I was in the same house as you. So I know that you had to do some different trainings and stuff. Would you say that there are some more changes to how teachers are being trained and taught, especially with handling students versus when you were?
We have a lot more behavior students than we would have had back in the 80s and even the 90s. A lot more kids are coming from broken homes or, divorced families. In Mason City, there's a big problem with drugs, and there's problems with abuse and those kinds of things, those traumas, they weren't as well known about as they are now. And teachers back then had no patience for a disruptive student. You would at Fayette, we just didn't have that. We only had 13, 14 kids in a room. You just didn't see a student act out and be as disruptive as a lot of students are nowadays.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I just didn't get the chance to talk to you about?
I think we covered it all.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much.